everyone. And happy Valentine's Day. You can tell the people who were awake this morning and realized it was Valentine's Day because they're actually wearing red or pink this morning. Not all of us were that organized. I heard that. If everybody could find a seat, that would be great. There's lots of spaces down here on the right-hand side this morning. Okay. So, Todd, do I need to split you up? I'm gonna make you sit at a desk by the teacher's desk. Okay, in honor of Valentine's Day, I was trying to find a fun quote. And I didn't find one particular to Valentine's Day, but I did think it was kind of cool that Saint Valentine was not only the patron saint of lovers, but also of beekeepers, epileptics, and travelers. So I know there's a lot of travelers in this group. So if you don't celebrate hearts and candy and chocolates, you can celebrate him for traveling. Our inspiration today comes from Katharine Hepburn. Love has nothing to do with what you are expecting to get, only what you are expecting to give, which is everything.
I'm feeling kind of loving this.
Adrian, do you want to introduce our guests?
Okay.
Good morning.
And first, I have to thank Michelle, who's probably sleeping in, and Resilience 1220, and all you Rotarians that came last night. It was amazing. So thank you all so much. And we're so excited to hear Margot Hamilton speak. And Marilyn Sandiford came with her. And then we're excited that Asher is here, Nick's son. So thank you so much. Thank you.
I think we probably caught just about everybody, but if not, on the entrance table, there's a card that we're gonna put in the mail to Kevin McGuire. If you wouldn't mind just signing it and letting him know we're thinking of him, I would appreciate that. I want to call up, Jen's not here, Katie, Erica, I saw Lori, I think. Lori, can you guys come up for just a second? Doug's not here this morning either.
Jen is here. She's online.
Oh, hi, Jen. We'll pretend you're up front with us, Jen.
I love that that picture made it.
So I just want to give these ladies, a huge thank you and a huge round of applause from all of us for the work they put in to make Denim and Diamonds a huge success. We also had, I think it's Jenny, and Lauren.
And Jody.
Yeah,
And Annette.
yeah, we had a huge team behind the scenes. These three and Jen put in an incredible amount of work. So, and Doug also, who couldn't be here this morning. So, and I think we have an update.
So give yourself a huge round of applause. We raised over $70,000.
So, and we're already looking forward to next year. So.
Are we?
So, and I don't know if you saw, Carolyn, your photos were amazing, but they didn't hit my email till 2:30 this morning, so they did not make it into my slideshow this morning, sorry. Okay, couple quick announcements, not too many this morning. March 13th, we are dark on March 14th. And we have a Rowdy Rotarians the evening of March 13th. March 13th is also the Rotary Club of Evergreen's 40th anniversary. So it's a big deal and we really want you to come out. Let's celebrate, have some fun. I'm hoping you're going to be there, Tom. So Tom is our charter member and I'm hoping he can make it that evening. So we're looking forward to it. It's going to be a neat event. We've got some fun activities and special things planned. So please make sure to mark your calendar and come out for that. The other big one coming up is April 24th, which is our Area 8 dinner. This is an event that we do with the other local clubs every year. We're doing it a little bit differently this year in that we're going to do it as a fundraiser for our Imagination Library program. And for those, Erica, do you want to come give a 30-second Imagination Library summary for people who don't know what it is, or do you want me to? Okay, I'll do it. Imagination Library is a program that was started by Dolly Parton, and our club supports a large number of local children. About 1,300, our club and the other local clubs support about 1,300 children from birth through age 5. And they get a free physical printed book in the mail once a month if they sign up. So it's a really good way to promote early childhood literacy. And it's an amazing program. We're doing the Area 8 dinner as a fundraiser. So we would love it if you would mark your calendar for that. It's going to be delicious food. We're going to have phenomenal speakers. So mark your calendar and plan on coming to that. And I'm going to remind everybody to check our club's website for committee meetings, other events going on, that type of thing. I get at least a couple emails a week. Hey, can you tell me when such and so committee meets this month? Yes, but so can the club website and club calendar. So please check there because I don't always get emails responded to quickly enough. All right, we're going to do general announcements. If you have any announcements, come on up and make sure to stand behind the podium so Zoom people can see you.
Yeah.
You just get a microphone and you can fight it out.
We can, yeah,
We'll find it.
we're gonna divide and conquer here. So I'm Chuck Adams. I was fired from Rotary last July 1st. I know. So I'm gonna talk about food and shelter today. Two things that are very important to us here in Evergreen. Number one, food. There is a meal train out there for Kevin, more for Christy, because Kevin is not eating solid foods. We need some help on that right now. There's nobody past, I think Brenda, where's Chris? He left.
I'm over here.
There you are. Past Brenda, I think tonight.
No, two next.
Do you? Okay, you can do, if you can't do an actual meal, then do a gift card or something like that, but I'll get the sign up out. Who's scribed today? Okay. All right. Good thing I asked, huh? And Mindy, take control. So that's number one, meal train for Kevin, and I'll get the link out to whoever is scribed to both of you. The other thing I want to talk about, and kind of in conjunction with Richard, Pastor Ayler here, Kimberly and I have been working hard at the Evergreen Echo Shelter. We've committed at least one day a month for the next, well, forever, but it's been since about October, November of last year. And I wanted to read just a little bit of an impact of the Echo food drive that we do every single or every other Friday. There was this gentleman that was housed there. His name was Don. And the headline of it is, "Well done, good and faithful servant, come and share in my happiness." Don was a little bit of a history here. He was an Army veteran, a good and faithful servant, but I also thought of you as a good and faithful servant, meaning people that work there. And I encourage everyone to check it out. It is a phenomenal program. They house between 10 and 18 different folks that have just made one wrong decision or something has happened in their lives to be there. Don served our country in Korea, raised a family, was a truck driver, and for the past 30 years has served in mountain community as our neighbor, church member, and volunteer in several local service organizations. In February of 2024, his longtime partner passed away and Don lost his housing and ended up living in his pickup truck. He didn't tell anyone for months until the truck radiator and heater both broke in early December. Don was welcomed into the Echo shelter that night and every night for 2 months and worked with the Echo's experienced social workers, caseworkers, navigating a path forward. And there's caseworkers every time I've been there. We cook in the kitchen. It's really pretty cool getting to know some of these folks. With their hard work, Don was qualified for Veterans Housing Assistance, and this past Monday, Don moved into his own place. Helping neighbors through this most painful, often hidden, difficult times in their life is what you do as an Echo volunteer at the shelter or the food pantry, or what we do to bring in food every other Friday. So I wanted to just kind of share that, encourage you to get involved with the Echo Shelter beyond just the food drive. It's really pretty cool. He served the country. He was a great guy to just get to know. You go in there, you cook in the kitchen, and then you go out and get to know some of these folks. So anything else you want to add to that?
Well, thank you, Chuck. No, and I just.
Sorry that was long.
No, you're good. Yeah, I just wanted to add that, the shelter program is just amazing, as I've said before, and I'd love for us to, I mentioned a couple of weeks ago that I'd love to organize some volunteers from Rotary to maybe help out in some way, maybe cook a meal once a month or something. I've heard from some of you, which is great. So thank you. And I'll be in touch in the coming weeks to try and organize something, because I think it'd be great for us to have a group maybe cook a meal once a month. So be on the lookout for an email from me on that. I also have an announcement, because I'm the chair of the food drive once a month. And we will be doing that next Friday. So please bring your food. As you heard from Chuck, it's so helpful to that program. And I did want to clarify something. I've had some of you asked me about, if you forget your food, can you give cash? And I asked them about that, and they said, yes, you can give cash, but it goes directly to Echo. It doesn't go to the food drive specifically. If you want to help the food drive, you don't have time to go shopping for a lot of groceries, get a gift card to Costco, King Super, Safeway. They use those gift cards and then they go buy the food they need. Honestly, she said that's the best way we can help, because then she can go shopping for what they need the most. So bring your food next Friday or a gift card to one of the grocery stores. Thank you so much.
Good morning. How are y'all doing? Peyton Thomas, for those you don't know me, I'm the Director of Speakers for Africa, and I just wanted to say thank you. You guys, the Evergreen Rotary has helped sponsor some of our latrine project in Western Uganda. So I'll be going there on this coming Sunday to kind of wrap everything up. So really, I just want to let you guys know that that's going on. And if you want any information or more information, please come and see me after the meeting this morning. Tomorrow at Cactus Jacks, we're just having like a little send-off kind of goodbye party, not a fundraiser, not asking for anything, but just well wishes. So that's gonna be at 5 p.m. tomorrow at Cactus Jacks. So if you want to come and learn a little bit more about what we're doing or say goodbye, that'd be an awesome opportunity to connect a little bit more. So again, I just thank you very much. I appreciate all your support, and I'll be joining you from Uganda next week or next time. Oh, that's it.
Good morning, Chris Davis, and real quick, can I just add on to what Adrian said? Thank you guys for coming out last night to Jack Bartley. Jack and Steve, I thought were amazing. I had a great time. And I don't know why I do this, but I always count how many Rotarians I find in the room. There were at least 15 Rotarians there, maybe 20. I probably missed a couple. So thank you guys for your support. We appreciate it. Why am I here? Oh, shoot. We're having a youth services meeting right after this meeting. So probably, yeah, I know, right? That's how I feel. It was past my bedtime last night when I got home. So right after this meeting, youth services is one of our avenues of service. So I want to invite everybody here. It's not a closed meeting. If you all come, we'll just push all the tables together and have a good time and find out what the kids are doing in the community. So thank you.
Morning, folks. Jack Stapleton here. Before I get into the actual substance of the announcements, as Mindy pointed out, most of these classic saints are multitaskers. And so, since spring will eventually come up, I want to call your attention to Saint Fiacre, an Irishman who worked in modern day France, who's the patron saint of gardeners. He also is the patron saint of taxi drivers. I don't know if that's been extended to Lyft and Uber yet, but the third one you can deal with as you want, and he is the patron saint of people suffering from hemorrhoids. So, having prepared you for this profound message here, I want to let you know two things about going on our website. I have uploaded the latest photo directory. Go to the website, go to the members area. That drop-down menu will give you the photo directory. If your photo isn't in there, please get it in there because I'll probably do this again next month. The other thing is, how many of you know that we have a YouTube page, a YouTube channel? Okay. Oh, yeah, we really do. Absolutely. Yeah. And it's mostly pictures of my vacation, which I haven't had in a year. No. The recordings, the Zoom recordings of these meetings are now being edited down and loaded on there. So you will find, if you want to check out one of the really entertaining announcements, or more likely our speakers, there's a link now on the front page of the website. So check that out. Thank you.
Good morning, I'm Sarah Miller, the Executive Director here at Center for the Arts, and I am here today because I don't often get to talk to you about our free programming. There are flyers on your tables. We have an upcoming training. We have a partnership with the Colorado Alzheimer's Association. I know that some of you in this room have been touched by those struggling with the challenges of dementia or Alzheimer's. And we at CAE wanted to offer this training to the community on Thursday, March 6th. So if any of you are interested in coming, it will be about a 90-minute training with a representative from the Alzheimer's Association, talking about dealing with the challenges of dementia and Alzheimer's. There's also a little blurb down here. We had a program that started right before COVID that we only got a year of, called Share the Moment. And it's a way that CAE can provide opportunities for those struggling with memory loss and their caregivers to come have an experience at the Art Center, to experience art and experience a hands-on project. Just really an opportunity for those who are teamed up to overcome these challenges of memory loss to come and have a relaxed environment where they can share a positive activity. So the training will have very little to do with our Share the Moment program, but the reason I bring it up is we are looking for docents who can help lead some of those Share the Moment tours here at CAE. So if you are looking for opportunities to get more involved as a volunteer, we've got that upcoming as well. But the Alzheimer's training is free to anyone, whether you're interested in becoming a volunteer or not. And I did just want to give a plug. We are so excited about this. We had our first veterans program start last week. We created a program called Painting in Peace. One of our oil painting instructors is leading free art classes for military veterans here at CAE. So if you all know any military veterans who you think would benefit, no experience required. You don't have to be an artist, but many of you probably know Pem Dunn. He is one of our beloved oil painting instructors here. Pem is heading that up for us, and that's a monthly program free for any military veterans. And that next one will be on March 5th. So we'd love it if you would spread the word about some of this great free programming we're doing here. And please come to our training because we want to be able to open it up to the community. Thank you. Yeah.
With all that said, obviously we have a lot going on with our club and our members. I have been asked to remind everyone, please do not send your personal projects and events to the club through Club Runner. If everybody starts sending their events and their fundraisers and their projects, we're all going to be inundated with emails. So please hold on to them. If you can't be at a meeting, you're welcome to email it to me and I can make the announcement for you and it can go out in our general announcements. But please don't use Club Runner to send your private stuff to the entire club. Okay, with that, Jenny, you're out. Russell's getting her presentation.
Good morning. This is my first year on the Speakers Committee. It might be my last. When I was told that February was going to be my month, I was like, oh gosh, that's the middle of winter. And then I discovered my first chance to introduce and get a speaker was going to be today, February 14th. And so immediately I said, well, who's the person I want to invite on Valentine's Day? And having read Colorado Serenity magazine for years, I know that featured in the Serenity of Love and Characters Count, that several Rotarians have been featured by Margot Hamilton, our speaker. People like Ann and Mike Moore, Linda and Dale Lovin, Gail Sharp, Lori and Jim Davis, Connie and Ted Ning and their daughter Heather. And just in January, we had Janie and Tom Myers. So Rotary is certainly not underrepresented by Margot. Was that a clue?
Marcia.
Marcia, thanks, Margot. So everybody has a story. And so I invited Margot to come today to tell us her story. Please welcome Margot Hamilton. You see, I got it to work.
You did get it to work.
Do you want to be right-handed or left-handed?
I
On
need
the-
another hand.
Well, I could be Vanna.
I cannot thank you enough. I just feel like I'm in a room of family. I've known all of you for a long time, not all of you, but many of you. And for those that I've recently met and interviewed, consider yourself a friend for life. Now, you've read about the Serenity Love column that I have done. And I do Characters Count every so often. But my writing career started way back. And my love interest was with Colorado Singles Denver magazine. And I wrote about CSI Miami. Did everybody watch that show, CSI Miami? You remember Bodie Bliss, that beautiful woman on the cover? She was raised in a teepee in Aspen and discovered by Hollywood. And that's how she got on that show. And she blessed me to do her story. Anybody listen to KYGO, Country Western Music, when we had radio? Who remembers Mud Flap? The affable Mud Flap? So I interviewed him and made him cry. And if you want to know how I made him cry, you're free to take any of these magazines. So love will find a way. I have had a unique love story myself. And it started with that woman right there. That's Madeline Squire. When I was growing up with a father who was the assistant dean of agriculture at CSU and a mathematician extraordinaire, and he had a daughter that was math challenged. And so he just said, you'll never amount to anything if you can't do math. So I took to writing, and when I got in trouble at school, the teacher was smart enough to say, write a story. I wrote countless stories of Madeline Squire. She was born and raised in Fort Collins. She was born in 1893. I never had grandparents. Well, I had grandparents, but they were all gone by the time I was born. So I adopted her. She adopted me. She's wearing sunglasses because she had double enucleation. Say it right? Thank you. And so she had an infection in her eyeballs, high fever, and as a result, her eyeballs were removed. My friends, when I was growing up, was intrigued by that. I was intrigued by that. And she could do anything. She lived alone. Her brother married, had 5 kids, got a divorce. He traveled around the United States. She took care of his 5 kids. She often took care of me. And I wrote so many stories about her through grade school, and she honored me to come to grade school to speak to my friends. And her topic was love, that no matter what your handicap is, if you can't love, you are the one that's handicapped. That always stayed with me, always stayed with me. So that's where the writing started with her. And then I started, better get my notes. I started in high school trying to find job. And in my era of high school, they had DECA. Does anybody remember DECA in high school? Well, I didn't want to work in business. And then there was something else called HERO for home economics related occupations. Didn't want to work in food service. And some miraculous thing happened that I was able to work at the Good Samaritan Retirement Village as an assistant physical therapy person. Now you have to get a degree for that. I was trained by a man named Ken that ran the physical therapy department at CSU. And then I've also worked with at-risk kids while I was doing that. And these two cherubs were products of actual prostitution. And we brought some of these kids into Fort Collins, and I was just intrigued with their mother's stories and with theirs. And I just wanted to share that with you. As I went into DECA, or into HERO and got a job at Good Samaritan, I started really falling in love with older people. And I started working with Phyllis Foster, who created something called reality orientation before Dr. Alzheimer's developed the term Alzheimer's. So I was learning through Madeline and through the people I worked with that love is really all about trust, being unconditional in your love to whom you give it to, and acceptance. Later on, I started working with more at-risk kids. At this picture, can you tell it's kind of late 80s, early 90s by my hair? If you look in the background right here, I can see it on the computer screen a little bit better, but his face is purposely viewed. I started working with kids in jail. I worked with one kid in the Oklahoma State Penitentiary who at age 16 was the youngest to be sentenced to death row. This kid was attempted murder charge was against him. And they would fly me in to talk to these kids, which all came through working with seniors and loving seniors, working with Madeline and just giving my heart away. So there I started doing teen skits. And I was asked to go all over to talk to kids dressed like this. Then therapists started picking up that I could draw stories out of kids because I learned that hurt turns to hate. And I don't care what a kid has done, even if you're on death row for 3 murders. He was a hurt child from the age of 6 months old. I don't want to go into the story. It's heartbreaking. But through that, therapists started having me come dressed like this, and I'd do a teen skit, pretending I was one of more of those angry teenagers. And I would just funnel my own rage or anger at the system for not understanding that hurt turns to hate. We have to understand that hurt turns to hate. So there's another shot right there. I was speaking to a very large group of therapists in Virginia, and there was over 9,000 people through that event, which caught the interest of this guy. That's Bob Guccione Jr. Does the name Bob Guccione ring a bell with anybody? His father established Penthouse magazine. Bob Guccione Jr. started Spin magazine. I was going to crazy rock concerts and people would want me, different organizations, police, detectives, to go in dressed like that picture you saw before and try to find who was pushing drugs or young girls that were selling their bodies. And I learned that rock and roll had a lot of draw on these kids. And one band in particular was called Slayer. Does anybody know the band Slayer? I'm glad you don't. They're pretty ranked. They had a song called Necrophiliac. I don't even want to go into what that song is about. But we were talking about how kids act out. And kids were acting out Slayer's song. Graveyard desecration. All kinds of horrible things were going on. And Bob Guccione Jr., when he started Spin Magazine, which was all about rock and roll, he said, I don't believe it. And I was actually invited into Slayer's tour bus. And Tom Araya was the lead singer. And as I went through the tour bus, I had to go through all these young girls that were doing crazy, horribly awful things with the band members to the back of the bus where Tom Araya was glued to the television set and crying. And I just heard him singing, darkness imprisoning me, all that I see, all that I can be, I cannot live, I cannot die. And here he's singing that song and coming in, watching the news and crying. When out his band members are doing drugs, there's young girls, and he's watching the news. And I'm like, Tom, what is it? And he said, my best friend's in Desert Storm, and I just learned he died. And he's crying. And I thought, this guy is human. So when he's not this beast that people portrayed him to be, it was all an act. And yet young kids were following the message of his music, the horror of his lyrics. And we talked about that. Bob Guccione Jr. flew in. And when I was in these concerts, and Slayer was one of them, they'd break out into mosh pits. Anybody remember a mosh pit? And at the Slayer concert, I was just interviewing kids and on the periphery, getting information for a radio program and different things. I was a part of at that time. And all of a sudden a mosh pit broke out, and I was kind of in the middle of it. And there was a kid that had a Western jacket with the long flanges that the Western jackets have. And on each flange was a razor blade. And he's going through the mosh pit like this. And he's slicing kids in the face and the arms. And I just dragged to the floor, just dropped. And there was blood, and there was blood on my clothes. And all of a sudden I'm picked up by these two kids that had been following me, and I'd seen them. And they looked quite militant and quite sinister, yet they saved me out of this mosh pit. And I said, who are you? And they said, our group is Abraxas, and we have been watching you. And you really care about these kids. And for some reason, that touched them. They weren't on the side of good by any measure, but they wanted to help me because they knew I was helping the kids. And they were against the drugs, and they were against the pushers, but they weren't against some of the lyrics of that Slayer song. When I met them, I told Bob Guccione Jr., I now have somebody for you to come interview in Denver, which were these two boys. So we had dinner in their apartment, which was an underground kind of tunnel in Denver, excuse me. And their rooms were all painted black. And there was horrible paraphernalia in there that I don't want to even tell you or describe to you. But the kitchen was bubblegum pink. And around the borders was the Herman Munster lunchbox and the Partridge Family lunchbox and the Brady lunchbox, which was a true dichotomy to what this evil presence they wanted to come across as. So we sat down and we had dinner with them, and they were intrigued by Bob Guccione Jr., thinking, you must have had a great childhood. Your dad must have brought home all kinds of women. You must have had whatever. And he said, my childhood was horrible. My dad treated my mom horribly. And he started sharing his truth with them that I don't know many people knew Bob Guccione Jr.'s truth about living with his father. And he said, how he treated my mother made me so mad. I begged her to take us and leave the house, and she never would. And so that caused those two boys to open up. They resonated with each other's stories. And one of them's father was a very rich and well-known banker in Boston. And he said, I was sent away to boarding schools, the finest boarding schools Switzerland had to offer. I never saw my parents. They went on vacations without us. And I never felt loved by my dad. And I'm just sitting in the midst of this with my jaw dropping at the miracle before me. So what I am doing to Bob Guccione Jr. before they broke the barrier. These guys were trying to be very rude and holding to these strong truths of hate and evil. And so they served us Diablo wine, and that's the wine bottle. So I asked him if I could keep that for a souvenir. So that's what, this is the day after that. So that's a bad picture of Bob Guccione Jr. He doesn't go around looking like that. But we survived that. And he wrote the most amazing story for his spin readers about seeing a different side of that music. Then, of course, there's the love of my life. Anybody recognize him? John Bon Jovi. And the first concert I had to go to was at McNichols Arena, 1985, headlining Bon Jovi. But a group before them, known as Skinny Puppy, anybody ever heard of Skinny Puppy? They opened up for him. This was my first entrance into this world that I was going to work in. And I thought, I can't do this with Skinny Puppy. Oh my gosh, I don't think I could go to these concerts. And I just saw things that night that became second nature to me of working with kids. But standing back, I was appalled at what I was seeing. And so my boss said, let's just watch Bon Jovi for 10 minutes and then we can leave. So I was 7 rows from the front near the right-hand side of the stage at McNichols. And this guy in leopard spandex and wild hair, and he opens the curtain and I looked up and my heart went, "Dum," and I didn't even know who he was. And 5 minutes later, John Bon Jovi jumps on stage. My boss goes into 10 minutes and he goes, let's go. And I go, no, I'm staying. And through John Bon Jovi, I was able to learn all kinds of things. He was anti-drug on MTV. Anybody remember MTV? He had anti-drug messages all the time. He worked with Covenant House in New York. I started interacting with Covenant House in New York, and I was able to meet him at Pepsi Center and have a one-on-one with him in his VIP suite when he owned the Philadelphia Soul Arena football team and John Elway owned Colorado Crush. And I got to meet him and tell him, your music kind of changed my life because I could see the good through what you were doing, and it meant a lot. So how did I fall in love with all these kids too? I'm working these pictures in with my story. When I graduated high school, my dad, knowing I wasn't going to amount to anything because I couldn't do math, I wanted to be an occupational therapist and go to CSU, but he thought, you love horses, you need to go to this college on the Western Slope because it had a farm and ranch management program in addition to an equestrian program. And his goal for me was to find a rich rancher and marry him. That was his academic goal for me. So while I was at this college, there was only at that point in time, late 70s, maybe 900 students. Drugs was a big thing back then. And my dad always said, if you ever do drugs, you'll disappoint me. And in my extended family of cousins, there was a lot of drug use and some horrible things happened to them because of it. And so they were a good lesson for me to learn from. And I didn't want to disappoint my dad, so I never did drugs. But there was one girl there that they called Lullaby, and she was in the vet program. And she was sent there by her parents so they could get a divorce. And she was very upset by this. I don't know anything about her past other than she was self-soothing through cocaine and alcohol, and the two mixed in her body. And she would just go into rages. And everybody said, wait till you see Lullaby in a rage. And I thought, how horrible. So one night they brought Lullaby in through a door I was standing near, and an arm around each guy, her feet were dragging, and they put her in a room and she commenced to do this screaming, and nobody did anything. And about 5 minutes later, she came out with a car key. And this is always hard to talk about, even all these years later. And nobody made a move to stop her from getting in her car. And she went through the door into the parking lot and I just jumped on her and knocked her to the ground, strapped the car keys, and I just threw them into the night. And we never found them again. So I walked her around, and this was about the time Cher was married to Greg Allman. And I had read in the Inquirer that when Greg Allman got into his drug frenzy, Cher walked him, because Cher was against drugs too. How she married him, I don't know. But she always had kind of an anti-drug message. And so I thought, okay, I'll just walk Lullaby. Her real name was Catherine, but she self-soothed by singing English lullabies to herself. And I didn't even know what to say to her. This is way before what I've just told you. This is in my infancy of understanding hurt turns to hate. And she told me about her parents divorcing, and she was an only child like me. And she felt abandoned and she didn't want to be at that school, but drugs were plentiful. And she got addicted within her first couple of weeks, and she was a year or two ahead of me. And I didn't know what to say to her. I didn't have anything to say to her. And we didn't have counselors on campus, and we didn't know how to handle this back in the late 70s. And so I just kept walking her and saying, oh, you're going to help animals, and you've got a bright future, and you're doing good in school. And I just tried to be a morale for her. Didn't work. And when I said, you know, behind every dark cloud is a silver lining, and to this day, I can see her looking at me like, you are absolutely out of your mind, which I was. I didn't know what to say to her. So the next day at campus, she was coming up to the dorms. I was going down to the campus, and I said, Lullaby, are you feeling better? She didn't even know who I was. And she looked at me with a Cheshire grin on her face and just went on her way, didn't say a word. And I didn't know to tell a teacher, to tell anyone what I had experienced with her the night before. I didn't know. So the next morning we had to go into the pasture to bring our horses up for the equestrian part of my academic career. And we found Lullaby. She had hung herself with a dog leash in a tree. So that was when I said, I need to know more. I could have helped her. And that is why I became so dedicated to this. No matter if I was in a mosh pit with blood on my clothes and Abraxas lifted me out of the pit, I'd do it over and over and over again, because who knows what Lullaby was at that concert that night. And who knows what influence I might have had, or even Abraxas had, to show that they helped me. So then I went to Texas for a few years, and I was intrigued by the Galveston Orphans Home. And I just started volunteering my first year in college with these beautiful orphan children. And they taught me that love is respect, love is trust, and again, love is unconditional acceptance. Through that, I came to Evergreen in 1985. And I was given a program called Compassion Connection to start working with kids. So that's where the concert started. And now I'm kind of bringing you up to date on that. And I met so many interesting people through Compassion Connection. Marilyn Vanderburg, Colorado's only Miss America, who has written an amazing book, Miss America by Day, that I wish all of you would read. She started the Kemp Foundation with several other people. And she helped me work with some kids that were sexually abused. And she was one of my dearest friends from that point on. I met Sally Chessie Raphael, Larry King, and Geraldo, because we're all hearing about this crazy stuff I was doing. And they wanted to do programs about these kids. They did want to know about Slayer's music. They did want to know why kids were killing themselves, why they were turning to evil and not to good. And sadly, I experienced firsthand a lot of what these kids were doing. I was going into a psychiatric hospital, and I would look like what you saw with my hair out, my Metallica shirt and my thrashed clothes. And I'd lay on the floor, and there'd be psychologists behind a mirror that the kids thought was a mirror. And I would say, man, it has to suck being in here. I'm so scared. I gotta get out of here. And I'd act like I was the victim of what they had experienced, but I had to draw it out. And the one thing I will never forget was a young 12-year-old girl said she was playing Crystal Dimensions with boys. And I said, well, what's Crystal Dimensions? And she said, well, it's a sex game. Just, I'll leave it at that. And she had never told anybody that before. And that's how they were able to help her. So I've been in some tough stuff. And then I thought, I need to go back to my roots of working with the senior population. And I was blessed to work at the Seniors Resource Center's Yellow House as their program coordinator. That was such a blessing for me. Here is one of our floats that we put in the Evergreen Rodeo Parade. Seniors Resource Center used to sponsor the Mountain Music Festival, if you all remember how much fun that is, and we still have it, but it's a little different than it was back then. And then we started with that job. Canyon Courier wanted me to have a column to write about seniors in our community. But what they wanted me to write about is you shouldn't have throw rugs on the floor and you need to clip your toenails. And I thought, we have all these amazing people living in Evergreen that have all these stories of history and what they've done to make our community strong with arts and with whatever it is. And I said, I want to write about their stories. And so that's how I started interviewing seniors and started the Senior Connection through Canyon Courier. Well, then Margaret Hennessy walked into my office one day and she said, I live in Conifer. I love what you're doing in the Canyon Courier. I'm starting a newspaper. It's called the Mountain Connection, and I want you to help me. And so that led to a long, loving, another best friend in the world, Margaret Hennessy career. And I did the youth spotlight, the senior spotlight, and we raised money. Oh, I also did the pig column with Marty Lombardi-Perkovich. And we gave all that money that we got through advertising away. So we were giving $3,500 a month away. We took nothing. So that's how the Mountain Connection started. There's Marty Lombardi-Perkovich making his prominent approach in the Evergreen Rodeo Parade. If you can see him, he was with Future Homemakers of America. There he's at another celebration. Then the movie Babe came out, and a movie theater invited me in Denver to bring Marty to do a movie review of the movie Babe. So he's buying his ticket, sold him popcorn, and there he is in the movie seat. So I needed to take you out of the pit of gloom and doom with those kids to what we were doing. The Denver Post caught wind of Marty Lombardi-Perkovich, and that's one of their spotlight editors. If you remember, the Denver Post had the spotlight column. And she interviewed Marty and took it very seriously. Then I was also doing international employment background checks on people. And through that, I was interviewing someone. I interviewed people at the International Space Station. I interviewed all kinds of wonderful people. And then somebody gave me a reference by the name of Scott Coors, who is the son of Bill Coors. And so I interviewed him and my heart's pounding and I'm thinking I need to do a story on the Coors family. And Scott said, well, our family's never done a story publicly since 1960. Personally, due to my uncle, Adolph Coors III, was kidnapped and murdered in Morrison on February 9th, 1960. And I said, oh, okay, I understand. He goes, but I think it's time we change that. So I was blessed to do that story in a magazine that Cat Stone called Evergreen Living. Now there's a new Evergreen Living out. That's not the original. This is the original. So I have a couple of copies and I have all this to give away if you want any of that. From that story, I met Sparky Gates Cannon of the Gates Chateau in Kittredge and the Gates Rubber Company. And then through that, I met her brother. That's Charlie Gates Jr. His dad was Charles Cassius Gates Sr., who started the Gates Rubber Company. I met John Elway. And then we connected Bill Coors, that's Scott in the background, with Sparky. I don't know if you can see that very well. And I was able and blessed to write the biographies of both Sparky and Bill Coors. And then Bill, just to throw this in, he is responsible for the Little Boy bomb because of the insulators that he made. Without Bill Coors, there wouldn't have been a atomic bomb. Now you're saying, I don't understand that, but that's taking away from the story. And I thought you just want to know, but I was able to go and find this story out, which turned into a documentary Bill and I created called The Will to Live from our book called The Will to Live. So that's the premiere. There's the book. I also have that on the table if you want to see that. And then Colorado Serenity, I've written for them on and off. And they broached me to do some writing for them. And I said, you know, I'd really love to do this Serenity of Love thing. And I told Doug and Holly about it, and they bought my pitch. And that brings us to today. So that's a brief excerpt of a crazy, wild story. But I thank you for your time. I thank you for the invitation. And if anybody wants to take a magazine, you're welcome. I have more. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Margot. Do we have any questions? Almost always.
I gave away the store.
That's okay. Kimra has one.
You're all speechless.
Margo, thank you so much. So if you had advice for people who wanted to start a story, a conversation maybe with someone important in their life, what questions, what advice would you give people to help build that rapport so that people would tell their story?
That's a really good, leave it to Kimra, right? Kimra. That's a good question because a lot of people don't want to share their truth. And when they have their guard up, you're not going to be able to get it down. So you have to find a common bond somehow, somewhere. Divorce, a broken heart that you've had, and maybe you know a little bit about their lives and just say, I'm concerned about you. And maybe what you don't know is what I've gone through. And once trust is earned through that, people start talking and sharing. And maybe it's just a one-on-one thing. When we had the Compassion Connection, I had an international, well, not international, Canada and the United States, and I started a referral process, which was easier in the 80s and 90s and early 2000s to qualify counselors. It's a little more difficult now, but referrals are also good. And just, I'm always here for you when you want to talk. So, but it's that winning, that earning trust. Trust is earned.
I'm just curious, out of all the experiences that you shared with us today, what would you say would be, you've done a lot. What would be your proudest achievement?
Oh, wow. Touches my heart because it's Gail. You just don't know what she means to me for her to ask me that. I'm very humbled by everything I did. I did it without a degree. I mean, I'm not trained. I did it out of love. So I think my top priority was I loved everybody for who they were or who they are and took no judgment. And then to earn the trust of someone like Bill Coors and write a biography with him. And we were able to drop his walls, and he wanted to help kids. So we call this a biographical inspirational workbook. And it's just earning that trust and earning that love, because the Coors family is pretty close and doesn't share too much. And through his son, Scott, we were able to lower Bill's guard a little bit. So that's a great question. I'm just proud that through all that I've been through, I've learned not to judge and not to question, because you don't know what anyone's gone through. Bill.
known you over 20 years and I never knew about the Metallica days. I'll tell you, that was amazing. That's exactly what I was gonna ask about what your proudest achievement was. Well, take it, if you were to tell somebody some of the things you've done, how could they get involved here, right here in Evergreen?
Resilience 1220.
Thank you.
As simple as that. Resilience, we are so lucky in our community that we have someone that can avail free counseling to kids from 12 to 20. And I don't know now, because I haven't been working as closely with Resilience or with the kids in the community, but our suicide rate was like #1 in Colorado. And our drug and alcohol use was deplorable. And I remember in 1993, was it Mr. Jackson that was the high school principal at Evergreen High School? I wanted to do something with Evergreen High School. And he had his head down on his desk and he was crying when I walked in his office. And he said, there are so many drunk kids in our classrooms today. We don't have enough police to take care of this. And Resilience 1220. Volunteer, and if you see a kid and a kid looks lonely or whatever, don't be afraid to go up to that kid and say, is there anything you need? Is there anything I can do? Just even to make that connection, have them look at you. They might not say anything, but at least they know one person cared. So that's all it takes.
Thank you. Thank you so much for being here, Margot. Rotary is working to eradicate polio in the world, and we've been doing so for many, many years. As our thank you for being here today, we'll be donating 60 doses of polio vaccine in your name. So thank you. Thank you very much, everyone, for being here, and go out and share the magic of Rotary with the world around us.